Can you say something more about this virtual universities, $1 per student, and
Sure.
how to go about it?
So, starting with the virtual university, 2 years ago, we went to Duke University and we showed them what telepresence could do, and it was a healthy give and take, and they were kind of interested. They started to take up on it. A year later, they came back and said, we're going to do a virtual university. We're going to take our professors in India, our professors in the US, our professors in UK. We're going to enable all of our students with this technology. We're going to completely change the way that we interface. We basically, as a professor lectures, the floor matting follows the camera around. You could have 2 locations, or you could have 300 locations. And they're going to put their imprint on a global basis, and one of the locations is here in India. And so we know that it will work at the university level. In India, I would challenge the group. Why shouldn't we do that for all of our children here? For anybody who is qualified, get them into a virtual university and set that as a longer goal. Now, for the universities to work, we've got to go back and really get K through 12, using the US term, going well. We've got to basically say, how do we take these technologies and how do we bring, just like GE now brings their quality engineers, whether they're in this country, in the US, or Western Europe, to where the work comes to them, we need to do the same thing with the teachers. We need to train our teachers to this technology and deliver it virtually over a backbone broadband capability, then put a wireless mesh at the end and bring it straight into the classroom. And let the children do what they do best, which is let them interface through games and computer technology to learn these new areas, as opposed to perhaps the way that we were taught 1 or 2 generations ago. This isn't theory that we're talking about. We've already done this, and if you want to see it, come to Bangalore. Watch what we're doing. Go to Melbourne and look what's happening in one of the poorest sections there. They got a problem. This is working so well that students are ahead of those in other areas, and it creates a problems in terms of social promotion on it. Or go to New York City, where one of the key pilots are in one of the most challenging education groups. But it's how do we get together, and I want to compliment your Ministry of Information and Technology, also your Ministry of Education. We're working with those groups together. But I think we're talking about taking small steps. I'd say let's ask your Prime Minister to lead. Let's, as a country, say let's skip a generation. Let's set an unreasonable goal that's impossible, $1 per month for education. Give a goal of how do we get there in 5 to 7 years, and say how do we work backward off of that vision to begin to drive it. But if you don't build out your national broadband, everything I've talked about won't work. You can do wireless after you get to the key inflection points. Next question.
John, I think, no, please go ahead, sorry.
Okay.
After that, Yashoda.
So that's one of the reasons I grabbed it. It's a CEO problem. I like to be in control, and if I hold the mic, I can do that. I can come over and ask and put my arm around somebody and ask them, how am I doing so far?
You're doing great, John.
Okay, so what's your question?
I'm Pawan from Sun Valley, Idaho, and what I think now I understand why CEOs are paid so much. You leverage well.
I made $1 per year for 3.5 years after 2001, so you should only get paid when you're producing results.
Well, I think that what you've fertilized in my head is that we need to leverage, just the way you are doing,
Yes?
in transportation, and highways aren't going to do it, in energy, and all the related issues
Completely agree.
that really are bogging our country down with the population. Perhaps you can shed some light on that.
Well, if you think about it, when you think about smart connected communities, whether they're the cities of the future that you build up out of the New Delhis or Bangalores, or they're the cities that take rural communities and bring them together virtually, it's the ability to say how you do all these together. When people talk about job creation, they make a terrible mistake by thinking of them in silos. If you talk about what smart grids will do for you, it's a couple hundred jobs per state in the US, maybe 1,000. If you talk about what safety and security will do for you, it's another element. If you talk about what education will do for you, it's another group. You talk about healthcare, it's another group. You talk about the ability for a small business person to access anyone within a state. You talk about a tutor being able to do their services not by traveling around, but doing it virtually. You begin to think about how you do security in a safe, effective way by tagging everything, knowing where it is. Then you're talking about 1 million jobs. And so my view and our view of our company is you do this as a community where these interlap together as opposed to specific silos. Even for smart transportation, you do it based upon time, traffic patterns, different routes, et cetera, within it. And so that's kind of how I view it in terms of direction.
My question to you was, it's a question where I'm still not complete with the idea of what I want to ask. You had so many innovative things going on that screen. And yet I was thinking of rural India, where there are so many have-nots. How can we take your dream through all those grids that you talked about and get it into rural India where there is no power and there are so many things, so many amenities that are not there, and yet use your innovation and your skills, because I can see where you're coming from, and do it fast and soon, because we have a government that we have to work with. We have a central government, we have a state government, we have many things that come in between, harnessing all those different things into the rural India. But yet our children need you. Yet our children need that kind of innovation. So where are we going and how do we do it and how fast can we do it? As representatives of the people, sometimes some of us get stymied because we know that time is running out for us. Yes. And we need to do this fast. How can you guide us?
A series of questions. One of the toughest things I think we have in front of us when you have so many possibilities is to take a step back, paint the vision of what you want to do, but then say, what are your top 3 priorities? For me, I showed 30 market adjacencies going to 50, but my top 3 were collaboration, video, and virtualization. So it starts with what are our top priorities, and then it starts with groups from government, from business, from academia, and state and local, as well as national, and saying the challenge is to do this in this time frame. Give them the vision, then saying how do we make it happen? I've talked to your leaders, regardless of party. I think this is something they all want to do. This is where business, for my peers in the room, should have no fear, because we have no special interest groups that have influence on us in this. And the ability to do this first for the good of every citizen in India, but then take what we do and export that virtually to emerging countries around our geography, which you must do to have political stability. As one of the earlier speakers said, if you don't get jobs in given countries, young people will become frustrated and there'll be more terrorists than you can handle regardless of how good your defense mechanisms are. And it's taking that to not only countries on our border, but taking them all the way around the world. But it does come back to what you said. Prioritize, set a vision, get the groups together, and then hold them accountable, and then have regular review, a disciplined process behind it. But it does start with what are you going to do different than others? And we'd be honored to play a role in that, and we actually are with a number of your groups. But if the Prime Minister would say, this is what I want, let me get the right groups together and challenge, we'd be happy to invest and to lead. Please. And then I'm going to check on the far right to make sure I got the other extreme.
And the middle.
And the middle. Thank you.
My name's Koel Puri, and I'm a chat show host, and I have a very micro-personal question to ask you as advice.
Okay.
Should I be looking at doing my show virtually? Because from the way that you're talking about things, that everything is moving away from one-on-one personal contact.
Yes.
So is there any room going to be in the future for actual one-on-one contact to have people that you talk to, or is everything going to become video conferencing?
The answer will be the combination of the two. And if you watch what is going on, 90% of the loads on networks are user-generated. The key is how do you do both? How do you take advantage of the traditional way of doing it and the traditional way of viewing it over TV, but also be able to have your blogs match that and your advertising models? All you have to do is ask the major newspapers in the world, especially in the US, what has happened to their market because they didn't transform. So I would say it's how you do the and is the question on that. And on some of these questions, I know they're very complex questions that you can't answer in 2 minutes. So I'll give initial reactions to it, and I encourage you to follow up with Wim or with myself personally on some of the thoughts on it. But you've hit one of the areas. We're in the media big time. Music industry lost control of their destiny. They got superseded where they don't make money on content. It gets copied too quickly. Now it's about how do they maintain control over their content again, but how do they get, instead of how do they split a dollar differently with an Apple and with a service provider or others, it's about how do you generate $3 through areas such as concerts, through memorabilia, to blogging interfacing. So my advice would be think about where your market's going and lead. Continue to generate what you've done well on, but perhaps try some of the new areas and see what works and doesn't work. Let me move to the far. Yes, ma'am. I'll stop here. But if somebody's got a question over here, hold up your hand so that I get to this.
Thank you, John.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to ask, that magic $1 figure caught my eye. What sort of infrastructure and investment does one need to get to that figure?
It is amazing. This is where Dr. Kalam got us thinking differently, and then Sunil challenged me in the service provider market. You need to think about not capital cost in the way we've traditionally done, but how do you do this on a charge where you carry the total structure, and perhaps with your service provider partners or government partners, and you pay for it by the drink, but the revenue ends up being the same in total. And this is where I think you start with the dream, then you put the challenges, because if you do this the way we've done it before, you're going to say, John, that's impossible. And my answer is exactly. But you think about how you do it each step of the way. What we've done, and what you see in a Bangalore as an example, is the ability to think out of box on this. And whether it's $2 or 50 cents, I'm not sure, but it is the ability to do this, and we think you can do it through technology. Government has to build the superhighway, however. I'm not talking about a 2-lane highway. I'm talking about a huge highway that connects the key posts around the country. Then you can go wireless off of that, allow each service provider to differentiate themselves on it, and the ability to bring that into every classroom, every citizen in the country, I think, is within our reach to do that. So this is where government has to kickstart us. Then we got to get, you have unbelievably talented people here. Challenge them on how do you do that together, determine which businesses you want to be a partner or not. We'd be honored for it. And I think it's within reach. In talking to Apollo, they think they can do the $1 per visit. And I watched them do it virtually on very tough scenarios. So I think we can do this, but I want to set what I do at Cisco. I set an unreasonable target. Wim looks me in the eye and goes, oh my gosh. And then he figures out how to do it. But if you do it the way you've done it in the past, it just doesn't work. And you've got to catch market transitions, which is video. And that's why I keep going back, whether it's healthcare by video or teaching by video.
John, I start with 2 words you said in your presentation. One being transforming a country, and second, not to agree with everything you say.
Okay? If you did, I haven't challenged you.
Yes. Number of cities, second-tier cities in India and the third-tier cities, cannot afford a CRS-3 at $90,000 or $100,000.
Yes.
If you truly mean what you say, that you want to
Yes.
transform a country,
Yes.
why don't you pick 20 cities in India, partner with the telcos, like Google did in the Valley, gave free Wi-Fi to everyone who wanted to log in, and get paid back on a per-service basis. Today, Narayana Hridayalaya in Bangalore and Aravind Eye Hospital afford doctor visits at 50 cents per visit. They are doing it, but they're doing it on a very small scale because they don't have your muscle. Why don't you instead of expecting cities to buy CRS-3 at the price they are at, which they never can, they simply don't have the revenues to do it. Create the highway with the government and recoup it back via service fees.
Are you with Sunil's?
I'm an
just
IS
teasing you.
officer.
The answer is that's what he taught me originally, and you have to design from the beginning to do it, and the answer is yes. Will we do it like Google? No, because you'll find most service providers don't view the Google partners with them. That doesn't mean I agree or disagree with their strategy. They're a wonderful company. But I do agree it takes government doing certain things, business doing others, service providers doing others, but it does take a different financial model that you've got to say, does your superhighway need some big engines in it? Of course. But that's the exception. At the remote areas, you've got to think about price points and buy the drink type of approach, and you've got to take some business risk. Would we be willing to do part of this as corporate social responsibility? Oh, yeah. But by the way, once it works, it then scales here, and it scales around the world. So it's like most good things in life. If you truly give back, you often get rewarded for it. And that perhaps is the best note to end on. Not only am I a believer in your country and your future, if you will have us, I'd be honored to be your partner in many aspects. But it only works like a democracy. You go back and forth with good ideas. Hopefully, if you've taken one thing away from today's meeting, I'm pleased I've done my job. And at the same time, I've learned an awful lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.